back live in the studio, Viewpoint, with our guest co-host first, Judith K. Busby. And I'd like to comment, Mrs. Busby, that our Senator Larry Bomke, our guest this morning, once again, has made a special trip from Springfield to here high on the hill in Atlanta to visit with his constituents, and we appreciate that very, very, very much. You could cop the plea, well, could we do it by telephone? And once in a while we have to do that. And so we particularly appreciate the fact that you make the effort, and that's why we're seeing in and around Golden County in a lot of these events day in and day out. Larry, how does one get information on a bill that might be pending in the legislation? Of course, the sad fact is that 99% of the listeners out there couldn't care less about the bills out there. And the only people that really know about them are the lobbyists,
right.
And they know
that's
how to get that information.
Yeah, that's true. Well, if a listener has a bill of particular interest, if they call my office, we'll get them copies of the bill.
Mm-hmm. And where it is in the legislative process.
Pardon me? And where it is in the legislative process, yes.
Yeah. Right ahead, Judith K. I'm marking my notes off.
There was some talk, getting back to AFSCME, and one of the pretty good-sized employers in Logan County being the Department of Corrections. There was some talk about changing the way they count their time on the job so that they can retire. What do you know?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not certain what you're referring to, Judy.
The way I understood the conversation, or misunderstood the conversation, as the case may be, it was that for other agencies of the state, your time is counted differently, so that it takes more years to retire, and they were thinking that maybe corrections time on the job should be raised a little.
There is a different formula for certain classes of employees, such as the police officers, Secretary of State, state police, correction officers. Highway maintainers now fall into that. It's called the alternative formula, so they can retire quicker than just a normal state employee. And I'm not sure what the years are. I'm sure there's somebody out there listening that knows. But they're under a different formula for retirement. That has been changed, by the way, under a two-tier system that was passed last spring. New employees that start January 1st will be under a different employment retirement pension contract than those who are currently working. It isn't, and that's true with members of the General Assembly. It affects all 5 pension systems, and the systems that the state is responsible for is the General Assembly, the judges, state employees, state university, and TRS, downstate teachers. 5 pension systems. All 5 pension systems do have a different pension starting January 1. So employees hired after January 1 won't have the same pension that current employees have, or members of the General Assembly. So the new members sworn in January 1 think they can retire maximum of 65% now, where a state employee can still retire at 75%. A member of the General Assembly can retire maximum now is 65% as max, whereas a state employee can retire at 75%. Under the alternative formula, they may be max out at 80%. But there is, corrections have a different formula than the normal state employee.
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with that. Speaking of corrections, I'd like to ask this question, and this is administrative as far within the department as opposed to legislative, but it's just, we see these big, huge buses running up and down I-55 all the time.
Yes.
I think there's a designated day of the week that we'll see them. They're moving these guys around. You have to wonder if that isn't a huge expense. Well, we know it's a huge expense, and we just wonder what are the reason for that.
Yeah, I'm not. I know what you're talking about because I've been to the local prison, and the buses have been there. And you know what? I'm absolutely certain someone has explained to me why they do that. but I can't recall. I'm sure there's a good reason why they do it, but I just don't recall the rationale for it.
Well, you just have to know that at the end of the year, that's been an enormous expense to run these guys all over,
Sure.
hell and back, up and down.
Some of them might be federal prisoners too. I'm just not not sure, and they may have to move them to a federal penitentiary. I'm just not.
What about committee assignments now for the ensuing year, Senator?
Right.
Those will be made or have been made?
Well, they probably have been made, although we have not gotten. I've not seen notice on it. I have been serving on as the Republican spokesperson in the Senate on transportation committee, financial institutions. I assume I'll be on. My expertise is insurance, Bill. I've been in the insurance business 37 years. And for some reason, they've always felt it was a conflict of interest for me to serve on that committee. And I finally said, why? I mean, that's my expertise. You have attorneys that serve on the Judiciary Committee, the criminal committee. Why would that be? So I'm hopeful that I'll serve on that committee because I have a lot of knowledge in that area. And then state government committee, local government committee, or some of the committees I served. I've served on a number of them. Those are the more recent ones.
There's a lot of talk at the federal level about, let's bury the hatchet. Lord knows we ought to do that. We don't have, or do we have that sense of acrimony at our state legislative level?
A lot of things are, when we talk about political, I always say that things are more regionalized than they are partisan in the Illinois General Assembly. And what I mean by that, we talked about the gun issue. Downstate Democrats and Republicans are more pro-gun. Upstate Republicans and Democrats are less likely to be pro-guns. Pro-life is more downstate, conservative. So you really have a lot of regional issues that affect your region, and Republicans and Democrats are working together. There's no question there are some partisan issues, but they're not as many as what one might assume there are. Could be partisan if we vote to do away with or consolidate the controller in the treasurer's office. That might be a partisan issue. But there are really few partisan issues. More issues are more regional.
That makes sense. We talk down here about, well, if we could just get rid of Chicago, we'd be much better off. Well, on the other hand, 80% of us live above I-80.
Right.
So we'd be kind of lonesome, for one thing.
There's a lot of tax revenue that comes out of Chicago. Downstate benefits, I know your listeners don't want to hear that, but we do benefit greatly from Chicago from a tax standpoint. Now, there's certainly some detriments that come with the more liberal Chicago area, and because some would say, hey, it's a good trade-off. We'll still dump them.
They still need us too, though.
We have a question, Mr. Ash? Yes, we have somebody on the line. Go ahead, caller. Go right ahead, caller.
Okay, I'm tired of politics.
Okay.
And nothing is ever going to be done if politics has to do it, has anything to do with it. We get promises at election time, and as soon as that election is over, we're right back to politics. You got to get together and make people proud to be from Illinois and pay your bills, please.
Well, thank you for the caller. I appreciate the fact that he's vented his frustration, and we can understand that. The fact of the matter is that politics it's been that way since the beginning of our country. Politics is the way things get done.
Well, yeah, to an degree, but the caller is right. He's absolutely correct that you have to put partisan politics aside and be statesman and address the issue. I couldn't agree more with what the caller said. And that's just something that has to happen. There have been occasions when I have broken from my caucus to vote for something that I thought was the right thing to do.
That's your job.
That's my job. And there's a lot of pressure sometimes to stick with your Republicans or stick with your Democrats. But I'm of the opinion that, and I'm not alone, there are others it's true, Kirk Dillard, who ran for governor, he and I voted for an issue. Well, it was, and in return, that was just a little caveat. I was going to get, if you remember, Lincoln Developmental Center was going to be reopened. But that came, actually, I thought it was the right thing to do. It was a pension bonding plan that Blagojevich came up with. And if anything he did, it's the only thing that's worked. But I really believed it was the right thing to do. And then the governor said, well, if you do this, we'll open up Lincoln Developmental Center. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But Kurt Dillard and I voted to make that bill become a reality. And there are other members, too. So, but the caller's right. We have to put politics behind us. We have to do what we can to make Illinois proud again. And I hope we can do it with the makeup of the General Assembly.
I think the gentleman spoke for a great number of our constituents out there.
Absolutely.
The frustration level is very, very high.
Yes.
My frustration level is all high, too, because the clock has decided to come up to 9 o'clock. We always try to close with a comment or two on the subject of the day, Senator. And today I ferreted out one that says, in politics, truce is stranger than friction. Thank you very much for Viewpoint.
Thank you, Bill and Judy.